Welcome to Page Eater, a weekly manga podcast. If you're here on Patreon, thank you for supporting me. I love you all. If you're here on YouTube, consider subscribing and heading over to the Patreon if you want these 5 days earlier. We have phenomenal chapters this week. A lot of great stuff. Finally, I get to talk about Choujin X, which is exciting. Even though it's a smaller chapter, it's the perfect place to start because we're kind of getting into massive arc, pretty much the next stage of the story, or the final stage of the story, if you will. And Ishida has been on break for quite a while. I wanted to try something a little bit different. I want to kind of live read or react to the chapter, even though there's no visuals, so it's kind of just audio. I don't know how that's going to work, like if it's entertaining or not, but I kind of saved everything, so I don't really know what's in here, and I'm excited to see what happens. So let me know. Starting with Choujin X, we open up 3 years later. The story takes place like 1999, 2000. So there's been a 3-year time jump since the events of the previous chapter, which is massive. Obviously, Ili awakening, big moment. It's very exciting. But I'm kind of curious who this first woman is, because at first I thought it might have been Tokyo's sister. I was like, oh, okay, it's pretty color page. 3 years later, she's got an urn, says uncle on it. It's not Tokyo's sister then. Maybe it's someone else. Is this a new character or someone that we should know? I don't know. Beautiful design though. I like it a lot. And we're getting kind of a showcase of like landscapes and a bit of the environment of the current day of 2003. And then you hit with like spaceships. I don't know where these planes are coming from timepiece wise, but they look like spaceships, or they're evolved way more technically advanced than everything that's going on. Mind you, they're bombing people riding horses and pushing carriages. It's kind of like modern-ish day for the most part. Obviously, there's villages and different places within the country that operate differently. So it's just weird, very out there to see literal spaceships, or at least the design looks very similar to one. They're going around dropping bombs on all of these innocent civilians, and then we finally get to see Ili as the prophet. So obviously this is 3 years after she's awakened as the next Choujin X, or taking Zora's powers, and we're all very curious on how this would actually work with Ili, because it's a bit scary, especially with what the calamity supposedly is. And Ili is like a public prophet, which is surprising. There's a lot of like architectural redesigns, even uniform redesigns. I don't really know what's going on. Like, it's fascinating. Ili's design is really cool. Like, she's publicly displayed, almost like kind of Pope-esque inspired. And then behind her is Azuma, who obviously is in a completely different uniform and does not look anything like the Keepers from Yamato Mori. Obviously, a lot of stuff has changed. No sighting of Tokyo in the 2003, but then we jump back to 2000, January 5th. So we're kind of playing into a flash forward, or at least modern day, and then jumping back to what happened over those 3 years to lead up to this event, which is interesting. So we start with the group and the sand guy, whose name I always forget, basically talking about some stuff that's happening in terms of the airplane crashes. If you remember, kind of airplanes came crashing down and everyone's like, oh my god, Queem's returned, he's attacking now. Clearly this is very strategical. So the sand guy is showing pretty much how his ability works. He's able to, as he calls it, sandulate any objects, right? But he can't sandulate objects that are made from Choujin powers, so they don't turn to sand. Azuma showcases this by making his own gun, the sand guy not being able to turn it to sand. The point of this display is to show that there's a part in the plane that is made out of material that he cannot sandulate, which means that the group figured out that the plane attacks are made by Choujin, which for us sounds pretty normal because we obviously speculated that this is either Queem or someone working with Queem, because he usually is represented by military or military planes. At the same time this is happening, Ili's having these prophecy visions of planes falling out of the sky and bombing major cities. She's kind of stressing out about it, obviously, because she doesn't really know how to see these futures. They kind of just happen. So she's scribbling it all down and realizing that all of these planes are bombing different places. But a very important vision that she sees, which leads you to the end of the chapter, is a mass invasion. This isn't present day invasion. This isn't 2003. This is still early 2000s. Ili manages manages to see all of this about to happen. The invasion and obviously the fall of all of these planes and the attacks on different nations coincides with the mass invasion that's currently coming with this brand new army that have the initials, what looks like GM, or at least just G. Then we get introduced to a brand new woman we haven't seen before. This G flag doesn't look like any flag we've seen before, but G stands for Gilta, which is a part of Queen's army 60 to 100 odd years ago, but the iteration of that flag has changed quite constantly since Queen's departure, so there is a high chance that this is a Queen underling, not Queen themselves, obviously. Maybe another child of Queen, which we have seen that Azume is one. This most likely, or more than likely, is a Gilta army in favor of Queen's ideology and trying to invade the modern day Yamato Mori and all the keepers across the country. Now, while this ends the chapter, this does raise a lot of questions. Firstly, why now? Secondly, where's Queen? Thirdly, is it actually successful? A big part of Queen's military might is that he could weaponize modern military, so he would advance technology quite rapidly because he had so much artillery in his disposal. It was part of him being Choujin X, basically. So he pushed the advancement of weaponry rather rapidly when it came to war. Even though Queen technically lost, the war still continued and lingered on for quite some bit, and the ideology that Queen built, I guess you could argue, never really died. Like a 99% chance that this is Queen's army in some doing, either directed by Queen himself from the backlines or the remnants of his ideology coming back stronger than ever. What's interesting to point out is with how Queen usually operates in terms of artillery evolution is that there's spaceships, or at least visually there's spaceships in 2003. So something has gone well here where it's stuck and this invasion is still actually happening. This is the event that I believe Ely is talking about in the current 2003 timeline, that something happened all of those years ago, and it's probably this invasion. So clearly a lot of big things are going to happen here. It's going to bring us a lot of players and bring back the Gilta army, more than likely push the story into its final stretch, not necessarily its final arc, but like the true story, like what Choujin X has really been building towards all of this time. It's a brilliant chapter. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's relatively short for Ishida, but I think that break done him justice. He's clearly cooking. He's got a lot of things up his sleeve, and I expect frequent chapters from here on out as normal. I am super keen to see what he does with the modern timeline, and then also how much we get from the 3-year time period. Obviously, we don't know where Tokyo is. We don't know how much Ely and Azuma and Yamato Mori has changed. It seems like a lot, especially with how Ely is treated as this prophecy, pope-like, godlike being. She's going to have a big target on her head, especially with all of the abilities that she has. Tokyo has kind of been against this from the beginning, so I wonder how he's going to react to this, or how he's going to deal with this invasion. There's probably a lot of twists and turns that we should expect, but nonetheless, a phenomenal chapter, and I really enjoyed it. Kagurabachi has everyone on the edge of their seats. What are we going to get, or what's going to happen? Is this going to be another side story? No, this is part 2. It seems like we're starting with a flashback. We're going back in time to figure out where this island actually comes from. So the Dandadan stone, the start of all of this drama with the swords and everything, the material, the cost of it, the importance of it, this is where it began. And this is context people have been asking for a very long time. So it turns out that there was a record-breaking earthquake 34 hours prior, and a vein of unidentified mineral was exposed on Irishima's surface. Irishima is a very small island between, let's say, the Japanese coastline and the mysterious island that emerged from the ocean. Most importantly, almost instantly that it was found, it would become Japan's most critical resource. And obviously, if you know anything about how this works for governments and critical resource and a power that is very much unstable but astronomical in its utilage, every company, every government body, every person or military might will want this rock. So it looks like we get into a meeting with weapon dealers, people trying to buy the Dandadan. Sorcerers are obviously involved because they need to try and get this type of mineral, this ore, illegally, because the island is technically uninhabited. Not the one that rose out the water, the Hiroshima. And sorcerers, not government bonded, are going there to take the stone and bring it back to the black market and sell it and whatnot, right? They're charging a lot of money for this. It's very powerful. This singular stone is going for a lot of money. The government and sorcerers are having trouble extracting the mineral from the island because there's people on it, but they're not ordinary sorcerers. So while they appear to be human, they are, at least from this person's perspective, assassins sent by Shikoku, which is the large island that appeared out of the water. What's great is that one of the other persons questions this and basically says that the government said it was a cluster of mutated seaweed, which means they're clearly lying to the general public so they can get their hands on this source material, lying to a lot of other government bodies most likely so they can hide the fact of what this island coming out the ocean is, as well as what Hiroshima is. It turns out the government doesn't actually know anything because it is physically impossible to take boats anywhere closer. It's surrounded by a powerful force field, and nobody knows what lies beyond that point. The weapon dealers go into this hypothetical. Why are they calling it Shikoku? You know, the large force field being the size of multiple cities. It's not humanly possible. They think these new humans or whatever they are just incredibly powerful, or they've somehow merged or utilized the ore to certain degrees that Japan and every other sorcerer just can't comprehend, or they may be an advanced civilization that knows how to use it. They are curious on why the island people are sending assassins to Hiroshima to stop Japan, and the running idea is they think that they don't want Japanese sorcerers and governments to have that powerful ore. Not that they're protecting it for themselves, but more so a way to perhaps not Japan to destroy themselves or just have them utilize very unstable raw material. They do talk about the island people almost like they're mermen or mermaids, like they need to get used to light and they probably have to train for land battle, which they're probably not used to because they came out of the water and performing military exercises, blah, blah, blah. You know, basically saying that they're preparing for war. There's nothing realistically stating that other than like the information that we have that they did go to war, but you don't really know the ignifier for it. Like what sparked the whole war to begin with? These people rose out of the ocean. There's nothing claiming that they're preparing for war or that they have to get used to sunlight, but you know, I guess you could make that assumption. But then you also just don't know who these people are, and they're trying to stop Japanese governments and sorcerers from taking this very unstable stone. It's odd. You know, clearly the information that's being passed around is very interpretive, and there's no real right or wrong way to understand it fully until you get the full context, which eventually we'll probably get, especially in this flashback. It seems like a very powerful conversation to have, where these people come from, or at least why they're here now, and what the purpose of the ore is, and why they're trying to protect it or utilize it, why the war happened to begin with, the peace treaty, etc., etc. I'm sure we're going to go through all of that. Shiba appears. Hooray, he's as cool as ever, as young as ever, and he's here to mess up everyone in here. But funny enough, it turns out he's from the Soga clan, or at least, sorry, he's not from the clan, he's their guardian. So being called a typical government dog, but specifically the guardian of the Soga clan, Soga being, you know, the sword saint, Magatsumi wielder, etc. Fascinating, because we know little about Soga and that clan specifically, and how Shiba's evolved with it, why he's even a guardian. Maybe there's a bit of royalty involved or a bit of mastery involved, which would make the most sense on how and why Soga acts the way that he does. But Shiba does oddly clarify that the guy was on the right track, that there is anticipation of war between Shikoku. And there's been a lot of skirmishes over that ore, the Datanseki stone. However, Shiba also mentions that the people from the island aren't directly attacking people. They're mostly trying to do diversions or lead people away, because they seem supposedly satisfied that they're trying to prevent people from mining the ore. So it seems like scientists have already got their hands on the ore, and they've been experimenting for 2 years now, but have basically got nowhere. Shiba wants to take the piece of ore that he just found with all the weapon dealers and take it to Chihiro's father, the person that originally created the swords. And that's exactly what he does. He takes that small piece just to show him and teleports out of there. This ends off the chapter with a really cool title card of the Setai War Arc. I'm glad we're getting this because we get the very important context of the island, the ore itself, how it's mined, how it's probably going to work and be melded into a sword, how that will affect Chihiro's blacksmithing as well, with him trying to recreate the sword, but also just provide us very valuable context of what happened. I don't expect this arc to be like super long, like 50 chapters, but I think a happy 20 to 35 would be really fitting, depending on how much stuff that Hokuzono wants to show for this war and all the bits and pieces that we already know of it, but then also the revelations, the truth, the reasoning, why this is this and why that is that. This is going to go a long way into propping up the rest of Kagurabachi's story, and it could be a very long time till we see Chihiro and the main cast of characters again. I don't know how much back and forth Hokuzono would want to do, messing with this war arc and the flashback and then trying to jump back to modern day. I think it'd be better just to rip the band-aid off and just fully focus on the importance of this arc and show you the brutal, realistic side of it. Discrepancies within Japan's assessment, how the government is being utilized and weaponized, and I guess how this island is also being villainized in a lot of way to the general public. There's a lot of murkiness, war crime things going on in here, which I'm fascinated to see how Hokuzono navigates it, because there is a lot, and I mean a lot, of real world influence in here. Hopefully Hokuzono can tell that story the way he wants to. Phenomenal chapter. I'm very excited to see where this arc goes. Ichi the Witch is prepping up to be pure sadness, because having this conversation between Minerva and Chrono, saddening. This is like the last handful of moments that they can have together. Conversation is turning out to be really sad. They even name their child Madoka, which means wish in an ancient tongue. Chrono goes on to beautifully and elegantly reiterate the importance of his life and how kind of meaningless and isolated or lonely it was until he met her. So really, all of the centuries that he's been alive before he met her is not the life that he thinks of. The life that he considers his life is the one that he spent with her. And he thanks her for sharing that life with him. It's a beautiful moment. It's very touching. It's very sad. Everyone's crying. Everyone's like, oh my God, I'm crying. Everyone's crying. Like, handling a moment like this, it might seem really easy, but it's very important to figure out what type of words you want to give across, how impactful you want to make it. Obviously, we all know that Chrono's passing and this wish is granted just so they can have that final moment together, and it's just as painful as ever. It does not take away from the original moment of Chrono dying or like resurrecting him just so he can have these final words. If anything, it reiterates the importance of their relationship. Chrono can kind of die in peace knowing that he got to say the words that he said, and hearing Minerva for the last time, it's a horrible thing. It's a horrible experience, but beautifully shown and just heartbreaking. Chrono dies, he shatters into pieces, he's gone, and Minerva is heartbroken, obviously. Screaming out, crying. Everyone's kind of paying their respect to Chrono. Jiki's not trying to cry either because she feels moved by it, which is great. I love her a lot. Obviously, Goku and Ichi showing their respects to Chrono, bowing their heads, which I think is very powerful. Surprisingly, what the biggest one is Octo. So obviously the conversation that Octo and Chrono had was pretty eye-opening for him. Octo, witnessing the death of Chrono, just feels confused. Like, he's very impacted by it as well. They spent a long time with each other, so he's kind of back and forth and like helping weak people and what he should do. And Chrono being weak, he's actually died now, and he kind of goes through these momentums and then he starts crying. Like, he just starts breaking down and just not really understanding what's going on, and then he's reflecting on Chrono's words, and just everything isn't meshing well with his emotions. Like, he's just doesn't know how to handle all of this, and he wishes he was gone too. Suddenly old mate rocks up, the guy's name that I can't remember, the long hair guy that was fighting Des, and he stabs Octo through the back, which transforms his injury into like the world hater stuff, which is like the warping, terraforming mutilation thing, and it's gross. Obviously this guy is here to destroy Octo because he doesn't want Octo to kind of water himself down. He no longer has the will to kill humans and even be, I guess, captured or acquired by the witches. It's a pretty sickening moment. This long-haired guy is very evil. He's one that pretty much sidelined Des for a good period of time, but she comes creeping through the portal as well. And with her comes all of the zombies and mutations that she was so horrified by, you know, from her trauma experiences, as well as her brother. But she comes flying through that portal and stabs this dude directly. Like, she is here on a mission now. Stabs that man straight in the head. Kind of wish we got to see what happened to Des and this guy prior to them teleporting to where Octo is in this event, which I kind of hope we get a bit of a flashback for, you know, a chapter or two. But Des is very much locked in now after not being locked in and kind of unsure with obviously her brother and like the issues that faced. That final panel is gorgeous to see. She is not holding back anymore, and she's definitely going to be a problem when she gets this serious. So we're getting closer to the end of this arc. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. It's shown a lot And I think it's a great step for the story as a whole, like a really interesting direction, especially with the child stuff, but also like humanizing Des a little bit more in terms of strength because she was way too strong, and knowing that there is ways to technically get under her skin. Phenomenal Ichi chapter. I really enjoyed it. I'm excited to see where it goes. Centuria. Last week we found out that Julian had to go to Cedric to basically heal Atoria. Atoria is the healing girl that sacrificed her life to heal Julian's family, so he wants to repay that debt. But Cedric is part of the Supreme Council. He's not a good guy, nor is he altruistic, so it's going to be difficult for Julian to convince Cedric. He's kind of the only person that can do it, but we also found out that Cedric and Arcos are close friends. He would often challenge Arcos to battle and was defeated every single time. So he's obsessed with strength. So the idea is to have Julian and Cedric battle. They can capture Cedric or even convince him after the duel if Julian wins to heal Astoria. I am very excited about this. I feel like Julian hasn't had a proper fight, which is weird because he went up against Lord Arcos and Arcos is stronger. But on a technicality sense, I don't think he's ever had a stronger fight, and he has a lot of things to protect now. So I'm curious to see how this works with Julian and Cedric because it's a life or death battle. It's not just for fun. Lalawag is obviously planning a lot of this. She's putting things in motion to go her way, manipulating Julian, obviously getting the situation rolling. We find out that the upper echelon of the palace knows very well that Julian killed Lord Arcos, so a lot of resentment there, a lot of hatred. People want Julian dead. Another interesting development happens between Lucas and Lalawag when they're talking about manipulating Julian, so basically save the child of prophecy, which is why she arrived, so they could eventually use Julian to save Atoria, because Atoria is special to Lalawag because she's a comrade and conspirator, someone that overcame the Western War with her and obviously shares similar feelings in regards to the Supreme Lords and everything in between. So she needs Atoria by her side, and the only way they can get that is Cedric, so she manipulated all of this to get Julian to do it. But Julian, she didn't really have to manipulate him, he kind of just offered to do it anyway because he felt indebted. So out of the good nature of Julian, he's been kind of pushed into this position, not knowing that people are trying to manipulate him as well. Lucas is a good man because he feels bad about manipulating Julian or Lalawag doing that, and he says that he should start living for himself because all he does is live for others. And it's a really admirable thing from both, obviously Julian being that type of person, but also Lucas wanting to look out for Julian and protect him, which is great. I feel like it brings them closer together without them really spending that time together. The chapter ends off in a pretty funny way where Zana, who was one of the girls that Julian saved with a really long tail, basically gets asked what's her relationship with Julian. So clearly she can tell that the other girls are jealous of her. They're like, hey, you're kind of close to Julian, what's going on? But she asks Julian, do you like older women? And they're like, oh, what are you doing? Julian misinterprets this because he thinks of older women and he thinks of Mira and Angvar, which he obviously cares and respects and thinks they're family. So he says, yeah, I like them. And they start freaking out. They're like, what's going on? Trying to grab him by either side and take her away from Zana. So it's a very funny and upbeat moment between them, especially with how dark this story can get. And directly after that, Julian's reflecting on wanting to find them happiness. And Luke is being upset at that because he's saying it like it has nothing to do with himself. It's like Julian disconnects himself from other people to find them happiness, even though Lucas thinks that he's the one that can make them happy. He just doesn't realize it and also deserves his own happiness as well. So it's kind of a funny little quirky ending with people really caring about each other, and I love it. I think it's very fun, and Centuria is always very exciting. So to me, this is the calm before the storm. I think it's going to get very rough, very chaotic, a lot of big things on the horizon, but I'm excited. Dandadan. So we get to see the ultimate yokai in kind of full force, starting to get more and more abilities. Ultimate yokai's name is Vlad, by the way. And obviously Saint Germain is the one handling this whole stuff, right? He has 4 powers and he wants a 5th one. Red does not think that's a good idea, which Red is the smoke guy. He's one that's fought a lot of people so far and getting in all these situations. So you kind of question the instability of the ultimate yokai and giving them all of these powers. Red is obviously weird about it, basically being like, yeah, like if you insert another one, it could evolve the powers themselves, but it also could basically make you blow up. It's very dangerous. What I find funny is the ultimate yokai is kind of losing control. Like he's talking fine, but like clearly he's just out of it, just calling Red clumsy, but he tries his best and he's adorable, go easy on him, etc, etc. And then it's revealed that the ultimate yokai and the 5th power is the Red Barons. The 5th power is Red Baron, which basically means Little Red Riding Hood of the fairy tale cards, in total 6 powers. The ultimate yokai tells him to accept his defeat, which basically means that Saint-Germain was planning to always give Red Baron over to ultimate yokai, which is obviously a big betrayal after the Red Baron done a lot of the footwork to get these powers back to Vlad and Saint-Germain. It's a pretty cool development, one that I'm curious on why it's being shown so intensively, almost like Red Baron won't fully get absorbed, or the reason why all of the good guys will be able to piece this stuff together is because Red Baron will betray Saint-Germain and potentially become another friend. I do wonder the longevity of the power stuff though. Obviously they need a couple more. Obviously they need another one, and we kind of kick off whatever fight that's going to bring. But we jump over to Umbrella Boy, whose name I have forgotten for the life of me. I'm sorry. He's waking up, he's kind of vibing, figuring out what's going on. He's confused because, you know, he's been through the wars. Daiki made it back, got united with his parents after 4 long years. Umbrella Boy, very happy. The pieces of the puzzle have got to start coming back together. Seiko, old lady with the cat, chilling, basically thanking these other old ladies, which were masked women, to turn Momo back to her original size. The ladies talk about, you know, the exhaustion of the rituals and that. So they asked some young folks to help out, and there was one whose background they didn't know, so now they're trying to track them down. For Dandadan, it's a pretty simple chapter. Clearly a lot of setup is currently in place. I know a lot of people are a bit iffy about this downtime. I don't exactly hate it. I think it's perfectly fine. Obviously it's not as high octane or overly entertaining as what Dandadan can be, but I guess a lot of this material, a lot of this information is very important, and it needs to be kind of contextualized as quick as possible for the most part, so we can move on to other stuff. The period itself is kind of like a low period just because there's so many different storylines going on and everything's getting jumbled together. Biggest issue, which is Momo's memory loss, is one that a lot of people don't really enjoy. So I'm okay with it for now. I think it's fine. It's definitely in a lower period, that's for sure, of entertainment. But again, it's building up that momentum. It's putting things in the right places, and we're expanding. So I'm always excited to see what Dandadan cooks up, and it's okay if a handful of chapters are slower than usual. That's fine with me. Witchriv. I've been excited for this chapter just because it's the first kind of magical fight that we're getting, and we don't know how Nona's going to work, or Mirror, or even Ral, so it's a bit odd, especially with Gio, who's got the sand ability. I'm curious to see what happens, and it's starting off pretty brutal because Nona has basically put her magic, or the needle thread, into this dude's body, which is kind of difficult to control, so she's kind of struggling to do it, but she's kind of refining it and figuring it out and really concentrating. So she's even reflecting on her mother. It's difficult for her to process it, but she's doing well, and she's not trying to actively kill Gia. She's just trying to get him to stop attacking and get rid of his magical tool. Gia goes through this little flashback of what looks like his mages or people being abusive towards him, which I'm sure we're going to get a bit more context on, but because of all of the nastiness that he's already done to Ral in that flashback, it's hard to kind of feel sorry for him. He rips out the thread of his body, which is Nona's ability, and just tears up all of his arm. It is disgusting. Takes out the needle and all. I know Witchriv is kind of brutal, but it always comes at like an unexpected pace. And because of this, he gains a new sense of confidence and starts brawling out, riding the sand, doing crazy stuff, kicks Nona, pretty much beating her up, which is crazy, and she's struggling to defend against him. Mira tries to do her best by throwing rocks and making them fall because she has like a sinking magic, which I find very cool, but she practically can't really do all too much because as much as she can make the sand sink, which is his power, it would also bury Nona as well, so she has to be kind of careful with how the sinking magic works. While Nona's on the ground struggling, she figures out that his magical tool has an activation process. So while it's not incantations or like hand signs or jutsu or whatever, you still need to kind of do something to activate the magical tool. Gia taps his foot on the ground every time he does it, and Nona figures this out, which puts her at a pretty higher chance of understanding how this works, and she's confident, which I like about her. She's fighting really confidently, even though she's getting beaten up and kind of overpowered and overutilized skillfully. She's still confident that she can take him out. She'll go for the boots, Mira will distract him, they can make it work. It seemed like a pretty effective plan. Keep the dirt away from Nona so she can go for the boots and probably pull out some cool tech with her magic. But before anything, they get interrupted by Raoul and his wheel magic, who starts to obliterate the sand as well. And he rocks up with a vengeance. He is ready for this. So I'm kind of glad it's a reunion, a three-way fight. I was kind of curious if it was just going to be Nona or Mira, but Raoul is here and he seems definitely upset. That's for sure. Still calling him big bro, but being like, you know, if you were still alive, you could have just sent a letter. This is a very big development moment for Raoul. Obviously, I still think he's becoming a main character because of the flashback we do have. He'd fit perfectly with the girls as well, and as balancing point, especially because his magic isn't overly powerful. Like, it's not the most ridiculously broken thing ever, and this is a fight that's very personal to him, which could most likely provide even more context for their relationship, what happened to Gear after he fell, perhaps even Gear's flashback in his childhood or whatever. But it's a really fun chapter. I really enjoy Witchriv, and I'm excited to see what happens next. So that are the main topics of the podcast. As usual, I want to talk about Kinato's magic, Alien Headbutt, and Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo, just to give my overall thoughts on them, nothing all too deep or crazy. First is Kinato's magic. I'm not too sure how I feel about this. It's an odd chapter, right? A bunch of context is needed to understand it, and if you don't tell it well, it comes across really gross and odd and just off-putting. I think there's more context that's needed. I think it's trying to do a little bit too much now. Like, this is something that could have easily just been avoided entirely. I'm not too sure why the author wanted to go down this route and try to express it this way, because I don't think they've personally done a very good job at doing so. Completely derail the story. There is a lot of context that can be given to make this more interesting or actually flesh it out in a better way, but currently, with how it was approached in this chapter, I'm not really the biggest fan. It's kind of throwing me off, and I feel like it's trying to do a little bit too much or bite off more than it can chew. I hope that it can kind of re-steer itself properly with a level of respect that feels enjoyable to indulge with, especially with the approach of certain conversations. But right now, at least with this chapter, not really my cup of tea. Alien Headbutt was fun. It's good. I'm excited. Big monster, big dude, big battle. It is the meathead of the story. I'm always excited to see what it wants to do. It's in this position, like, we're 4 chapters in now. We've kind of had 2 massive fights. This is probably the end of this fight. Definitely give us a better understanding on where the story directionally wants to go. I'm pretty worried that not a lot of people are enjoying this story. I have no foundation for that. It just feels like with how it's written, it could end kind of early. Like, it's still tiptoeing around the ideas of like, oh, is it popular enough or is it not popular enough? You know what I mean? So it's hard to fully fall in love with it because everything's on the chopping block. Same with Kinato. So, but I'm having fun with Alien Headbutt. I think it has that meathead sauce, the brutality behind it, the grotesque nature of the aliens. I think it's really fun. And the next handful of chapters are going to be incredibly pivotal for its overall pacing, direction of the story, and even some of the ideas that it's bringing across. It has introduced another character that could easily be someone very important, like a main cast, and travel together. So I'm fascinated to see what it does. Last but not least is Modulo, and similar to last time, I don't really have much to say about this. I think they're flying through a lot of different ideas, and I guess what I iterated in my video about Modulo is that it just doesn't have enough time to expand upon things in a way that it should be, paces through ideas too jarringly. I think there's so many different things happening in this chapter that don't really feel comfortable to me, and I would much rather them spend more time on integrating the connections between them better, or giving them time to bloom on their own. But obviously it's a short story. We don't have that much time. We have to get through a lot of this material rather rapidly. By no means am I saying that this chapter is bad or that it ruins the entirety of Modulo. The handful of chapters have just kind of confirmed my suspicions with the ending of this story and not really enjoying the pacing or the type of style that it's going for personally. In saying that, I think the ideas in here are good, and I think how they're shown is very interesting, very pretty. It just comes off a little bit jarring. I'm surprised we got to see Panda at the end though. It's been a while, and the utilization of Yuji hasn't really been my favorite. But then again, I'm not going to sit here and complain about Modulo. It's not my place to do so. I have fun with it. I think it's fine. Obviously, my own personal perspective, I wish things were done differently. I wish the approach to the story was done differently, because there are some brilliant ideas in here that could have been expanded upon in a lot of different ways. But clearly, Akutami had a vision for a shorter story, didn't want to linger on it for more than 40-50 chapters. But personally, I feel like the 50 to 60 chapter mark would have been very, very pretty to have, very enticing, and would have been able to cover a lot of different things that perhaps you may have issues with. At least I do. But it's It's not the end of the world. If you enjoy Modulo, you enjoy it. I'm happy for you. That brings us to the end of the podcast. Thank you all for listening. Obviously, a little bit of a different style this time around. So if you made it this far, let me know your thoughts. If you'd like for me to continue this type of style, kind of talking about the chapter, kind of like an overview with some of my opinions, or just me rambling about the chapter overall. I'm happy to do either or, honestly. Thank you very much for listening. I appreciate you all. If you're on Patreon, I love you. Thank you for supporting me directly. If you're on YouTube, consider subscribing. Head over to Patreon so you can get this early. Thank you all once again, and I will see you next week. Goodbye. Mwah.